welcome back to Getaway Day. As always, I am Mason, he is Gautham, and today we are here to make up for a missed week of podcasting, which means we have so much to talk about in so little time.
So
So,
little.
Gautham, speed run, how are you?
No. I just talked about 2
Perfect.
weeks of
Okay,
baseball.
Pete Rose. No, but seriously, how are you doing, bud?
I'm doing good. I'm ready to podcast and having a good long weekend, and we're gonna conclude that long weekend with a good podcast hour.
Oh yeah, let's do it. Maybe an hour five.
Hour 5.
Thinking possibly an
Deal.
hour five. So, all right. Well, so like I said, we missed last week. I was on my way back from Chicago, didn't get back until about 10 p.m. So we kind of missed our podcast time. Sorry about that. That's on me. But one of the biggest things that has happened baseball worldwide in the last couple years has happened last week, and that is the post mortem reinstatement of, I had his middle name, Peter Edward Rose Sr., member of the Big Red Machine, from the permanently ineligible list, along with Shoeless Joe Jackson, and quite a few other players from the Black Sox scandal of 1919, as well as a few other guys from times in between. We had a former owner of the Phillies who was betting on his team, was forced to sell, permanently ineligible. And then we had another guy who got in a physical altercation with his manager. He's now eligible for the Hall of Fame. So congrats.
I feel like we should really study like all of these guys and not just talk about Shoeless Joe and Pete Rose.
I mean,
That's for a future episode.
we really should. I think that would be a fun thing for you and I to do. I do also have a book that might shed some light on 1919. That would be interesting. I'll talk to you about that. But the big thing, Pete Rose, hits king with 4,256 career hits. The only person in the world who has eclipsed that number did not do it in one league, and that is Ichiro Suzuki. But Pete Rose, over a 24-year career, has the record for games played, plate appearances, at bats, hits, singles. He was the oldest player in the league 3 years in a row, basically the Rich Hill of his time. So this is the man that we're talking about.
Hey, Rich Hill signed in the last 2 weeks too. We don't have that on our rundown.
Oh, that's a good point. But
Anyways, sorry to hijack.
so this seems like a fairly cut and dry. He's eligible for the Hall of Fame in 2028 through the Eras Committee. And when you look at everything about Pete Rose's playing career, look at all of the Hall of Fame statistics, black ink, gray ink, which basically black ink is looking at like how many times he's led categories in his career in the stats. He blows out the average Hall of Famer. Gray ink, which is sort of a little bit of a nuanced version of black ink, blows it out. Hall of Fame monitor blows it out. Hall of Fame standards blows it out. Jaws, which looks at career WAR, 7-year peak WAR, his Jaws score in his WAR per 162 games, he eclipses the average major leaguer in everything but one, and that is his WAR per 162, partially because he played 24 seasons. So, Pete Rose, Hall of Famer. End of story, right?
Yeah, it's that easy. Yep, definitely. No, not
No.
like that.
No, why no? Explain.
Well, I don't think we're here to discuss Pete Rose's playing accolades. We've got some other things to talk about. And of course, this is a monumental decision by Manfred, because Pete Rose broke the one rule that baseball holds most sacred, to not, bet on the game. And Pete Rose had always been that basically guy that was, this is what happens to you if you break this rule. He was like the example of it. And though Manfred says, obviously a person no longer with us cannot represent a threat to the integrity of the game, by getting rid of his ineligibility, I think he's kind of undermining this rule, and they don't have that guy to point to now and say like, okay, this is what happens if like nobody is above this rule, uh, and you're still gonna get suspended. You're gonna be blackballed from the league, I guess, if you break this rule. And now we cannot say that anymore, really.
Yeah. And so the big thing for me here is that it's not so much that Pete Rose is deemed eligible again and that like he technically himself cannot bet on baseball again. But this has been the deterrent for active players for years and
Yep.
years and years because Pete Rose was able to have a spectacular, long, storied career before he got in trouble for this. Most players that will try and bet on baseball, they especially nowadays where it's super easy to go bet on baseball and super easy to get caught, as discussed in an episode last year where we were talking about shoot, who all was it? It was
Mr. Tucapita Marcano, being the main guy who got banned for life.
yes, and then there was also a pitcher for the Diamondbacks. I kept wanting to say it was Slade Ciccone, but it's not, right?
No, what was his name? It was he was a guy that pitched in. His name was like Andrew
Oh, Saul
something,
Frank.
right? Saul Frank,
Andrew
yeah.
Saul Frank. And so there was multiple guys that in the last year had been banned. Tucapita Marcano permanently. He is on this permanently ineligible list. He's still alive, so he's on the list. I think he would therefore be the only guy on the list.
No, there could be other guys on the list that are still alive, right?
Are there?
We just
I
don't. I don't know. I'm not sure.
we'll have to look into that. But basically, now saying, okay, Pete Rose is dead. Now we can go let him in. It's still gonna be a little bit weird for these young guys because it will be a little bit of a deterrent because it'll end their playing career right then and there. But for some of these guys that have been around for a decade and a half, well, why shouldn't they just start making a little money on the side? Maybe they'll get slapped on the wrist, but they'll eventually make it in the hall. It takes the deterrent and it just basically makes it more of a pepper spray. Like it is a
Yeah,
deterrent,
exactly.
but it's not gonna permanently stop anyone from doing any kind of harm. And
Mhm.
now we're saying, okay, he's now dead and can't celebrate himself, so we're gonna let him in. It's pointless. Like I understand the Hall of Fame has done a very good job of going back and finding guys that have already been enshrined and saying, "Hey, these guys are in. There are things they did that were very, very, very bad. Um, they harmed a lot of people, and there's two people I'm thinking of specifically that I guarantee you could name right now if I just quizzed you. One of them was a manager. The other one was a commissioner. In the Hall of Fame Museum, we saw this plaque.
Oh, the Kennesaw Mountain Landis, and
Kennesaw
then
Mountain
the
Landis and Cap Anson.
Cap Anson. Yeah.
So they were already in the hall. So then the hall went, ooh, we should probably, I don't know, mention that they were the reason that baseball was segregated for so long. Like these two were very specifically like two of the main guys that caused that.
Yeah.
Well, so are we going to do that with Pete Rose but still put him in? Like are we like what's the deal here? Cuz Pete Rose wasn't out of the Hall of Fame. He was out of the Hall of Plaques in the Hall of Fame. He had so many things in the museum. And that's
Yeah.
what people don't realize. And it kind of ticks me
And
off.
And Pete Rose was definitely right about one thing because he really wanted to be in the Hall of Fame, and he would always say that the Hall of Fame is for like the family, like your family, and it's for your fans. But that only matters, like I guess, if you're alive, if the player is alive. So to me, it's just like after the fact, and I hate like when these guys get in after they have died also because that happened with other players under different circumstances like Ron Santo, guy that like was always lobbying to get into the Hall of Fame. He never got in until like right after he died. It's like, okay, it's not, doesn't have the same effect.
Yeah, and obviously you have your extenuating circumstances like a Roy Halladay.
Yeah, of course.
That's something entirely different. But no, you're exactly right. Like some of these guys that get in through the Eras Committee, like yes, they should be there. They should have been there a long time ago. But Shoeless Joe Jackson was kept out from 1919 until 1991 when he was then deemed ineligible for the Hall of Fame based on a new rule, the Pete Rose rule, mind you. Um, but he was kept out for his entire life because of the things that he did. And then there was a clause put in for if you're on this list, you can't get in, yada, yada, yada. Well, now we've gone and taken that back. So what was the point of holding out Shoeless Joe? It's the
Yeah.
exact same situation. And as dumb as it is, I really don't think this should have ever been a thing. I think this was a bad decision on baseball's part. They made their mind up in 1989, made their mind up again in 1991. They upheld it time and time and time again. And then about 2.5 months ago, there was a statement from a very important political figure in the United States saying that he would give a complete and total pardon to Pete Rose and that he should be in the Hall of Fame. Problem with that is that there was no crime keeping Pete Rose out of the Hall of Fame. It was violating the rules of the entity that he was a part of. That is not a political thing. I mean, I guess in a way it is, but it's not in government politics. So a few things got intermixed, and there were some conversations between the commissioner, Rob Manfred, and this high ranking public official that I'm sure you all know who I'm talking about, and I'm not going to say the name because this is not that kind of podcast.
But yeah, that's a great way to summarize what has happened here because baseball has been consistent on this issue for 30 plus years, and now something changes. That's just unusual.
Yeah.
And it's driven by something, and I think we kind of know what that is.
And it's not driven by evidence. It's not driven by contrition. Pete Rose, it took him 15 years to admit that he ever placed a bet. And then he said he only bet a few times. And then they found out he bet way more than that. He actually bet for like the last 5 years of his career on his team, on other teams, on yada, yada, yada. And he only admitted to a portion of it. But they have proof. So this is not a story of contrition. This is not a story of, oh, Pete Rose finally understood what he did. No, this is a guy who broke a rule, knew he broke a rule, and then kind of like the OJ Simpson memoir book that was If I Did It. The family of the victims then got the rights to the book because, well, he can't make money off of killing their whatever. So they took the if and they made it really small and put it in the I, so it just says I did it. But it's kind of that same thing. It's like, if I did it,
Basically,
here's how I would have done it. Well, that's exactly what Pete Rose did. But he did it publicly years and years and years and signed so many autographs with, I'm sorry I bet on baseball. He never actually apologized.
Yeah, and to the point of like he knew he did it. He knew what he was doing. The guy played more games than any other baseball player has ever played.
Yeah.
He definitely knew the rules. They're posted right there in clubhouses everywhere.
I mean, we know the rules and we've never played a single game at the majors.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, so this is definitely not a story that's over. In 2027, the Eras Committee for not the classic base. Yeah, I think it's the classic baseball era is what they call it. But can you read the list of names again of who's on the committee?
Sure. Yeah. So it's a made up of former players, executives, and also media historian type people. So we got Paul Molitor, Eddie Murray, Tony Perez, Lee Smith, and Ozzie Smith, the players, and then Joe Torre is obviously a player and a manager and executive. Sandy Alderson, Terry McGuirk, Dayton Moore, Artie Moreno, and Brian Sabin. So a mix of GMs and owners. And then Bob Elliott, Leslie Heafy, Steve Hurt, Dick Cagle, and Larry Lester are the media members.
Yeah, and
So
so it's
16 and 12 of those need to vote yes for the player to get inducted. And I don't know all the steps that lead up to that vote, but Pete Rose is not like on that ballot yet. He
yeah.
has to be
So
selected for it.
that is an 8-person ballot. And that is for anything prior to 1980. I think players that played prior to 1980 can be on that ballot. And it will be 8 players that make that ballot. That's how it is every 3 years when they do this particular one. Actually, I think it's all the era committees are like that. But if he makes it to that 8, he then needs to get 75% of the electorate, which in this case is 12 votes, not the 260 votes or whatever that you need in order to make it through the Baseball Writers Association of America ballot between years 6 and 16 of you being out of the league. So it's a significantly easier bar to clear if you have friends in the committee. And the interesting note here is there is one guy in the committee that played with Pete Rose, and that's Tony Perez. And so that could go either incredibly well or incredibly poorly for Pete Rose. However, hearing some comments from Johnny Bench over the last year or so, sounds like everyone that was on his team did very much like him. And so I would guess that you'd probably see a little bit of Tony Perez trying to um, campaign on his behalf, is my guess. But
They were teammates for a very long time.
mhm. So it's going to be really complicated. And I'm sure if they really wanted to, there is a way that Pete Rose could get in before 2028. But something tells me they will wait and do it through that process um,
Yeah,
because of
I think so.
how difficult of a situation this is. You got any other thoughts on Pete Rose? Clearly, I have a lot more, but I'm
No, I think I'm
long-winded.
good for now. Yeah.
Right. Um. So yeah, I do think it would be interesting for us to go and look at just the permanently ineligible list at some other point and the players that came off it that aren't Pete, and kind of do a little bit of a who are they?
Hmm.
Be fun. Okay, so also the reason that we didn't podcast last week, rivalry weekend. So not something that's necessarily new to baseball because there are interleague rivalry series every year. The Cardinals always play the Royals. The Cubs always play the White Sox. The Reds always play the Guardians, and it happens every year. But for the first time ever, Major League Baseball has scheduled it so that all 30 teams are playing their deemed interleague rival at the same time, which made for some spectacular matchups. You had the Mets versus the Yankees. You had, I wouldn't say it's a spectacular matchup, but it's a really fun experience. The Cubs and the White Sox, which is where I was on Sunday last week. Um, Dodgers Angels.
Yeah. There were interesting matchups. I think that Mets Yankees one ended up being probably the most high profile, obviously because it's the Mets and the Yankees, but also because both teams are good
Yeah.
at the same time. And they ended up playing competitive games, really good games.
And you have
The Angels,
the Juan Soto storyline, and
yeah,
like there's a
and that was
reason
pretty
that was the
funny.
night
Like
games every night.
they weren't it wasn't every night, but
It was Sunday night though.
Sunday night, yep. But yeah, that it was pretty interesting to see Juan Soto's reception at Yankee Stadium, where he completely got showered with booze, and then he did a helmet tip as he went to take his first at bat. It's like I've never seen a player get a rousing ovation of booze, and then they tip their cap to the fans. But he was enjoying it. I think he plays well into that rivalry, and I'm looking forward to seeing how that continues to like unfold over the next however many years, because he's going to be coming back to Yankee Stadium for the next 14 years, right?
Yeah. So I would argue rivalry weekend as a whole was a massive success for Major League Baseball. Would you agree
Yeah,
with
it's
that?
cool. I liked it. Yeah, I like the idea of just having them all within the same weekend. Are they doing that for the next time the teams play, or
I
was this just a
I
one-off?
think it's a one-off this season. I would
It's
assume
probably
they're
hard to
gonna.
schedule it. Yeah.
Yeah, I would assume so. Um, I would assume that we're gonna start seeing that once a year, and
Hmm.
probably location trades each year. So is how it'll end up working. Just kind of how it is with like now you play every team every year, but a lot of teams you're only going to play, or a lot of the interleague teams you're only going to play one series. So one year you'll be at home, the next you'll be on the road. I'm going to guess that rivalry weekend will be sort of the same thing. The the question I had for you is clearly there's not 15 legitimate interleague rivalries. Um,
Right.
so we had a couple weird ones, and I want to get your thoughts on these particular rivalries. Uh, we'll start with one of the more interesting ones, in my opinion, and that was the Boston Red Sox and the Atlanta Braves.
Yeah, that one feels weird to me. It doesn't feel like a real rivalry because I've never like. w- I assume that's the team they always played going back to the early days of interleague. That was their like rival from the
S-
other league.
So what I think it is I don't know if this is going back to the 90 or to 97 when interleague play started. I don't know if they were playing that long back. But I think what it was is that the Braves were originally in Boston before they moved to Milwaukee to then move to Atlanta. So I think it's
Yeah,
one of those that because the Yankees were already taken with the Mets, the uh, Rays and Marlins make sense. You were trying to do interleague, and so obviously you're going to have the two Baltimore teams, DC and Baltimore, play each other. So Boston's just kind of screwed. They just don't have anybody
yeah.
naturally there. Toronto's probably the next closest, or Philadelphia, but there's not any sort of natural rivalry there. So
Yeah. They're
it,
just the leftovers basically.
yeah,
Because a lot of them link up very logically, like the Phillies and the Pirates. Okay, it's the same state,
yeah.
and
And then you even have like actually no. Who did the Rockies get?
the Rockies got the Diamondbacks. So it's kind of
Oh, so
geographical.
it wasn't all interleague.
I don't think so.
Oh, because Texas played Houston.
Yep.
Okay. So they weren't all interleague, which I guess kind
Right.
of helps a little bit because Colorado and Arizona actually makes a ton of sense, both geographically and the fact that they were both new expansion teams in the
Expansion.
90s.
Yeah. True.
Um, different expansions, but they're the closest teams historically in age there. So
But
uh,
then there's a weird one like the Eddie Vedder Cup
the
with
Eddie Vedder
Seattle
Cup
and
is the exact next
San
one I was
Diego.
going to.
Yeah, that one doesn't feel like a real rivalry. But now you're making me really wonder about what was going on in the original interleague when there were 16 teams in the NL and 14 in the AL. How did they all match up?
Well, they didn't
when they played those.
necessarily have to because you wouldn't play them all at the same time. So you'd probably just have one
Oh,
team that played like two teams.
you're right, but that's weird, right? Because the Cubs and the Sox would always play 6 games back then,
Yeah, and the
and now
Cardinals and the Royals would do the
yeah.
same.
But then how would
But
it work out for
yeah,
every team to play one team 6 times?
well, so originally it wasn't quite as hard because you didn't have the Diamondbacks or the Rays for the first two. No, just the first year of interleague play. You didn't have those two teams. So it, I don't
We would
know.
have to go back and look at like the
Yeah,
1999 schedule and see how they played.
97. 97 would
Yeah.
be the one to do because that was the very first one. So, but I loved it. I do think the Vetter Cup was stupid because they could have done any other name for the trophy, but instead they chose a known Cubs fan to name this rivalry series after.
Yeah.
He's one of the
Um,
biggest Cubs fans in the United States. And we're going to name the rivalry series between the Mariners and the Padres after him because he lived in both of those cities at one point in time.
and then what do we call the Giants and the A's series now? Because we can't call it the Bay Bridge series anymore.
The NorCal Classic.
Okay, well it's gonna have to get a new name in a few
Well,
years.
actually, it could be the down on the farm because they're playing at their AAA stadium.
Yeah, I guess.
So I can think of a ton of good names for that one right now, seeing as the A's are in the AAA stadium for the Giants.
They're playing
Um,
like a AAA team too.
yeah. All right. Well, we should probably move on.
Yeah,
Um,
unless you had anything you wanted to mention from the Cubs Sox game you went to.
so cold. It was so cold. It was like 80 degrees out in the suburbs where I was staying. It was 50 degrees in the stadium.
Yeah, I think they had another game like that today at Wrigley, and I'm going on Friday, so I'm really hoping that it's warm.
I hope it's cold for you just so that you can feel what I had to feel. And you actually have clothes in the region. So if you need something warmer, you have it at your disposal.
Hey, you had clothes in the region too, the gift shop,
Yeah, I don't want to talk about that.
and you bought something wonderful there.
Nope. Hey, I didn't get anything that said Cubs.
That's true.
So my original plan was to go in and they had a blanket that just looked like the scoreboard. I was
Yeah.
just gonna get that, and it's like, okay, I could do a scoreboard blanket. And then I just saw a plain gray crew neck that just said Wrigley Field, 1914. It's like, my guy, that's the one.
Yeah.
So they had one of them in a double XL. Whew, perfect.
Amazing.
And that game was so much more tolerable. But
What inning did you get that?
fourth,
Fourth. Okay. So okay.
I
So you warmed up for the
I
second half.
stuck it out for a while. But we were in the very top row, so we have just
Yeah.
the fencing behind us, so the wind blows straight through it. So at one point we also moved down a couple rows, and that was ideal.
Okay.
So all right. Ryan Ludus. Our friend Ryan, who as you all know, has been traded to the Los Angeles Dodgers here about 3 weeks ago, something like
Hmm.
that. He had made a couple of appearances, got about I think 2 saves down in Oklahoma City. Then it happened. He got the call at midnight from the Dodgers saying, "Hey, we need you here for a 6 o'clock game. Can you do it?" And he was, I believe, he was in Oklahoma City. Um, so he got up at midnight, got on a plane, flew to LA, got to the stadium just in time to start like getting ready for the game. Uh, this was Friday of the rivalry series. And so the Angels ended up going up. It was four
I
to
think it was 4-2.
it was 4-2 going into the ninth.
Yep.
Um, And the bullpen has been injured and taxed for the Dodgers recently. So Ryan got the call to come in the game in the ninth. He uh, got his first career strikeout. It was huge. He like three heaters, top of the zone, like 94 to Tim Anderson, was dotting the corner, got the strikeout. It was awesome. And then he had a few kind of bad luck, like maybe not the absolute best location for a changeup, but definitely not an incredibly hittable pitch either. Two of those. One of them got deep in the hole that Mookie couldn't corral and get the out at first because it was just so like far out to get to. So put a runner on. And then there was another one that was ended up being a double by Nolan Shanuel. So he gave up 2 runs, but he looked pretty darn confident at parts of that inning and looked really good.
Yeah, it was cool.
He then the next morning got the call that he is going back to Oklahoma City because Clayton Kershaw was coming off the injured list and they needed a spot on the 26 man.
Yeah.
Ryan did not get DFA'd. He was just optioned. That's it. I believe it was that when Austin Barnes was DFA'd?
Or was it Taylor?
Taylor was later. It was Austin Barnes first.
No, well, he wasn't later. I think it was before.
No, I just
But
mean Taylor
oh,
was after Barnes.
I don't know who it was.
It might have been Taylor, actually.
Yeah.
But yeah, so Ryan is still in the Dodgers organization. He is out closing in AAA or Oklahoma City. The Dodgers have had a couple more injuries to their bullpen since then. I believe Lou Trevino maybe has gotten the call to the Dodgers. But it kind of feels like Ryan might be the next man up. For all the Dodgers fans that were on social media trashing Ryan and basically wishing him and his family harm and misfortune, stop. Just stop. There were so many of those. It was ridiculous. The dude got a call at midnight and then pitched the same day and gave up 2 runs in a game they were already losing, and fans wanted his head. Who are you people?
Yeah, that's not good. But yeah, I was gonna make the same point that we never hear the call up story usually. We just see the guy that's shown up to pitch for your team, and then they either pitch well or they don't. But you don't really know like what goes into it, and it's very disorienting circumstances a lot of times when they get the last minute call and they have to travel, they have to get their life in order, they gotta prepare for the game and then go execute. So it's not like it's not straightforward. It's challenging.
Yeah. And after the season's over, I think we'll maybe be able to get a little bit more of a longer version of that story. I have been talking to Ryan. He's incredibly excited to share. Um, so hopefully we'll get to have him back on, or at least just the three of us chat. Um, but no, it was really cool to see. He did have to change his number because Dalton Rushing came up that same week and took number 68, or was given number 68. So Ryan had to go with 65. Now I have to get a number 65 jersey,
Okay.
but I'll get it on the way
Well, I
soon.
think that it's a good segue into another Dodgers pitcher who's making his way back. But I'll give you the transaction history. Ryan Ludis was optioned on 5/17. Blake Snell was transferred to the 60-day IL.
That's what it
And
was.
then
Okay.
Kershaw was activated. The next day, Edman was activated. Trevino contract was selected from the minors. Chris Taylor was released, and Kirby Yates was placed on the IL. 5/19, James Outman was optioned to the minors. Teoscar Hernandez was
Was Kirby
activated.
Yates on the 15 or the 60?
15.
Okay.
Then Barnes was he cleared waivers and released on the 20th. Bobby Miller was recalled on the 24th, and then Matt Sauer was optioned to the minors. Bobby Miller was optioned to the minors. JP Feyereisen was DFA'd, and Chris Stratton agreed to a 1-year contract. So the Dodgers are making all kinds of moves, and they have been all year. They have I believe, 14 pitchers on the IL, no position players at the moment. So they once again are having serious issues with keeping their pitchers healthy. They do have a lot of depth this year, as we've seen with guys like Ryan and many others that have contributed to their bullpen and starting rotation as well. But big, huge name, Shohei Ohtani, is working on his comeback to the mound for later in the summer. They talked to Dave Roberts on Saturday during the game, and he kind of said at the earliest it's going to be like after the All-Star break, so late July. And it makes sense that they're going to slow play him, but he did have a big milestone by getting to throw a session off the mound on Sunday
against live hitters. He had thrown
against
off the
live
mound a
hitters.
few times, but this time he actually faced hitters. And there's some video of it, and he looked like he was having fun, which is a
Yeah,
really, really good sign for a dude who's coming off of an injury. If he's doing his thing and is having fun, means that the pain isn't there.
I love the fact that he threw like not. He was basically sitting 95 and he topped at 97 on his first time back on the mound. It's like, who is this guy?
He also made a pretty good defensive play.
Yeah.
Yeah, it
And
didn't
then, but
didn't
I guess what I
I
go
didn't
ahead.
think we were doing PFP.
Well, we do everything. Shohei's a all rounder.
Fair enough.
But what makes it interesting to me is just the nature of this rehab, and I wanted to ask you about that because they can't really send him to Oklahoma City to do a rehab start. It's going to be interesting to see how they bring him along and how are they going to do this? Are they just simply going to give him simulated situations for him to work his way back and then he's just going to all of a sudden be back on Dodger Stadium mound pitching in a real game?
I would assume, but at the same time, I would kind of assume that he is probably. I think after the All Star break is a very nebulous answer that Dave Roberts gave. And if I were the Dodgers, given all the injury woes that they have right now, I would be incredibly reluctant unless you were in an absolute pinch to try and get Otani back on the mound this season. I know he probably wants to, and there might become a point where they need pitchers and he's ready. And at that point, okay, let's do it. But if I were them, I would not be rushing to bring Otani back as a pitcher, knowing that that's a problem. Like, how are we
Yep.
going to realistically do this in a way that he is still going to be in the lineup? He is still going to be able to do his normal thing and get enough work to feel confident in his pitches against live hitters. Um, so I wouldn't be entirely shocked if they did slow play it to the point where he didn't pitch in the regular season.
Really?
Um,
Okay. I guess I'd be surprised if that happens because it has been quite a few months since he actually had the surgery at the end of the 2023 season. So coming back in late summer kind of makes sense to me. I
it
doubt he's gonna
it
like
does,
go
but
long in starts. They're gonna probably bring him very slowly through August and September, like maybe 2 inning, 3 inning starts like that, and then
I mean the other thing they could do, and I don't know that they would, but especially if their bullpen is weak, is bring him in relief as his rehab, and
yeah.
then as soon as
The only problem I see with that is if he's in the lineup, there's a complication in warming up for the bullpen while you have to take your at bat. It's problematic. We saw that in the WBC where the only time he ever pitched out of the bullpen, he was like running to the bullpen to go warm up between at bats.
yeah, it's not ideal. I mean, they could
No.
also have him warm up in the tunnel, is they've got a batting cage back there. Like
Yeah.
there's ways to do it, but there's no great way to do it in my head, which is why I think it would be smart if they can to wait until the off season, let him progress normally, over the offseason and come back in on day one, opening day start, good to go.
Yeah,
I
I
I I
I
realized
doubt that's going to
I
happen.
realized that's a perfect world scenario. And this is anything but, especially for the Dodgers pitching staff. It is never a perfect situation.
No,
So I don't know.
but I'm very much like looking forward to when he does return to the mound. It's going to be pretty awesome.
Speaking of returning, how about that Acuna guy?
Yeah,
He played what, 3 or 4 games at Gwinnett as his rehab. I think he was like 7 for 15 with 3 home runs and like a stolen base or something, coming off of an ACL tear. And then the very
they were
first
like,
pitch he sees, he hits like 68 or something.
yeah, yeah, exactly. It was a 93 mile per hour pitch right down the middle. I bet Nick Pavetta wants to have that one back because it was just like this guy crushed it. And you're right about the rehab too. There was nothing for him to show in the minor leagues. He was ready to play, and he's now he hit homers in his first 2 games, I think, over the weekend. So that's like a giant boost for the Braves. I think that offense is gonna maybe start clicking. Maybe that's really what the Braves have been missing since basically early 2024. Now they get Acuna back, and I think everything just kind of will start to work better just because of the downstream effects of having a hitter like Acuna back in the lineup.
Okay. 3 games, 13 plate appearances, 2 home runs. Um, how much WAR do you think he has accumulated?
In his first 3 games with the
Three
Braves.
games.
Point 0.5.
Point 3. So you're
Point
not
3.
far
Okay.
off, which argue that's pretty good.
That's what the elite players do. They can have one big weekend and they're jumping up those WAR leaderboards.
Yeah, the fact that he's like already like in the top half of qualified hitters and he's nowhere near qualified,
Yeah,
impressive.
it is.
But no, I think you're 100% right. I think getting Acuna back is one of those things that this lineup is gonna kind of take in stride, and I think it's gonna be a huge help. Um, because now, like, Austin Riley's been a little,
Okay.
yeah, he's been a
Yeah.
little all over the place. Matt Olson's been okay, not great. Like, really, Nick Allen, I think defensively has been incredible. Um, but I don't know anybody on this team that offensively has just been killing it. Like, isn't Ozuna like striking out more than he ever has, or something like that?
No, Ozuna's been good, but the power hasn't really been there as much, but he's still been like pretty good. Uh
Okay. Oh, his average
Drake
has dipped a
Baldwin.
little bit.
Yeah.
He's
Drake
not up near
Baldwin's
three.
actually been amazing
Has he?
so far. Yeah.
So, and Sean Murphy's healthy again, isn't he?
He is. He's actually lost playing time to Drake Baldwin because Drake Baldwin's been amazing since basically early April. He started out extremely slow when he was subbing for Murphy. Then Murphy came back, and then slowly Baldwin has been wrestling away the playing time because he's actually been better than Murphy.
Dang. So that's really good for this team. The the big weak spot that the Braves have had so far this year has been the outfield.
Yeah, Harris has been horrible. I've been just like shocked by that. And also Albies has not been very good.
And how's Verdugo? I assume just eh.
Yeah, he hasn't been very good either.
So basically, their entire outfield was just a black hole, and now
Yeah.
you put a guy who doesn't have an MVP, right? He does not.
Uh,
His
no, he won the MVP in 23, right?
oh, for his 40-70, he did.
Yep.
I couldn't remember if Otani had
There
come
was
over
no
to.
there was no Shohei to compete with that year.
Okay, I couldn't remember
Yeah.
which year that was. So But yeah, no, this is gonna be huge. So really excited to see Acuna back. Um, now the interleague rival of the Braves have a little bit of the opposite problem. So you
Mhm.
know how we've been talking about that whole Rafael Devers not going to play the field, even though they want him to play like every position known to man. Apparently, um,
This saga does not end, apparently.
no, they drastically needed a third baseman 2 days ago when Alex Bregman went down with, I believe, a leg injury.
Yes, he had a quad injury, and this is not the first time that Bregman has had one. I believe it's his third quad injury over his career, and the last one he missed like 58 games. So this could be a lengthy absence. And they already said, yeah, it's like a significant strain. It's not like a
Yeah,
minor tweak or anything.
it's
It's
like
like he's going to be out for a
a
while,
grade 2 or grade 3.
probably. Yeah.
So
And by the way, what was Alex Bregman doing this year? He was having maybe the best like year of his career. Like he was going back to um, his early Houston days where he was kind of in the MVP conversation. He'd already uh, hit 11 home runs, 2.5 F4 produced. He was the best player, like all around player on the team
oh yeah, he was hitting
to this
right
point in
at
the season.
300,
Yeah,
hardly striking out, walking a lot. Like he was looking incredible.
yeah.
Which
And now the Red
Devers
Sox are
was slow to start. So
very slow, but he's
so
really come on strong now. And they've stuck to their guns. They're not gonna give Devers his glove back. They're gonna keep him at DH. I think that's the right thing to do.
I
But they've
agree.
got a huge hole now at third base. What are they gonna do?
Well, and so there's 2 points that I want to make. One, they called up their number 2 prospect, guy who has been perennially a top 10 since he was drafted. Like even in the low levels in the minors, he was a top 10 prospect in Major League Baseball, Marcelo Meyer. So he's up. He has the third base job until he either takes it until Bregman's back and then they have to figure out some way to keep him on the roster, or he struggles, gets sent back down for uh, mental reset, and then see what happens. But my other point was going to be you still have the issue that Yoshida is close to coming back. Yoshida is a terrible fielder, really needs to be a DH.
Yep.
So the fact that you're rocking Abraham Toro at first base now because Devers wouldn't do it, unless they make Yoshida a first baseman.
Yeah, that might be possible. But yeah, I think also Toro and Nick Sogard are the candidates to also play third base. With Meyer, they do kind of tout his defensive versatility, but in the minor leagues, he's basically only played shortstop and second base. He's only got 6 games in his career at third base, so it's like he's learning a new position too.
Yeah.
Um, so I don't know. Like the Red Sox are a little bit confusing to me right now because they're treading water. They're like around 500. They're clearly not dead, but they just seem like they're not really clicking. Other than Devers and then Bregman, who was killing it before. Devers is playing great, but outside of him, I just like am
Will,
surprised that this
Willier
offense
is
is not
about the
doing as
only other
much.
one that's doing anything.
Who was that? Abreu?
Willier Abreu.
Yep, yep. Other than him, yeah, it's like been kind of a rough go for this offense, and it's because they've lost like Tristan Casas. He wasn't producing before he got injured. They seem like they have some sort of um, bad parts of their lineup. Like
Yeah.
Trevor Story is not produced at all.
Christian Campbell's fallen back to earth.
He's fallen way back down to earth.
Ceden Rafaela, I've not heard anything from him yet this year. So, but no, and this is a team that's still rocking. Garrett Crochet is coming out and just he's looking great. Pretty much every time he goes out, like he does have an occasional not amazing outing, but
But his ERA is like 2.02
yeah,
on the season.
and
Yeah.
he just looks incredible. Him versus Chris Sale on the Friday game of the rivalry weekend. Oh my god, that was fun.
Yeah.
But yeah, like this team has a lot of good things going for it, but it seems like none of them are going at the same time.
They were like
So
the trendy like World Series pick even because people saw kind of down American League and you can see the makings of a really really good team with the top line starting pitching they have and then other like young players that have seemed to almost take a step back like Jaron Duran and some others that just they're not they're not doing enough but I
yeah.
still think they can get on a run and they can play a lot better than they have so far.
Well, and I think Duran will turn it around here pretty quick. I mean, the dude's got so much speed that really he just needs to start putting the ball in play a little bit more, and he'll end up on base. Um, yeah. So Boston, right? They're not out, or they're not out of it by any means. They're 7 games back of the Yankees, but they're within 1 game of second place. So
Yep.
they very much could push for a wild card spot. And I mean, it's early enough in the season; they could very much make a push for the division. But it is the Yankees to lose.
I know we don't have this on our rundown, but I feel like we got to talk about the Orioles uh, because a
Can we
lot has
not
happened to
until
the Orioles.
after? Can we not until a day where Charlie Morton didn't just have his best game in 2 years?
No, we got to talk about the Orioles. They fired their
Hey,
manager. They fired Brandon
that's
Hyde
true. They
after
did
all
fire
those
Brandon Hyde.
years of
And oh, sorry, keep going.
I was going to say just after all the years of Brandon Hyde basically taking them from the very beginning of their rebuild. He's survived all those bad, like 100 lost seasons, and he survived until now. And now that the expectations are very, very high for that team, they're like in a win now mode. Literally everything that could possibly go wrong has gone wrong for the Orioles this season, from the guys they signed in free agency, not really doing a lot. I'm thinking of like Tyler O'Neill and Ramon Laureano and Charlie Morton, who's been horrible up till today.
But
I mean, literally none of those signings have worked.
I
They've
would
had injuries.
I would separate the free agent signings between pitcher and hitter because I think they're two entirely different situations anyway. Like the hitters, they at least got guys who could maybe do some stuff.
But I'm just talking. I'm not even talking about like what they could do or whether we thought they were good signings. What they have done to this point in the season, it's they've got
Yeah,
nothing out of these guys.
but the pitching has been so bad that Kyle Gibson has got released.
He made like 3 starts for the team.
Mm-hmm. And this
Yeah,
is a team that does not have a rotation. Period.
yeah,
Like anyone in their rotation that is good is hurt. Everyone else doesn't exist. Like
yep,
this is the today is the first time that Charlie Morton has gone further than 4 2/3 innings in a game. He had not even made a start where he went 4 2/3. That was a relief appearance. Um, he had like a 13 ERA or something stupid until today. However, he did have a really good game where his curveball was looking crisp against the Cardinals today. Very unfortunate. Went 6, gave up 2 runs in the 6th inning to a home run to Pedro Pajes of all people. I don't know how he went over Mount Baltimore, but sure, let's do it.
yeah,
Um, but yeah, it just Cade Povich has so much potential, but it's he's not getting it done right now, and nobody else in that rotation is even got potential. They're just spot
yeah.
fillers.
But then even like Zach Eflin, an established guy, he's been terrible. He has a 13% strikeout rate this season.
Dean Kremer's not been
What
good
is going
either.
on? Yeah. So those guys, and then of course Grayson is hurt, and Kyle Bradish is hurt.
Tomayuka
So they're
Sagana.
He's been actually the best pitcher I think that they have right now. He's got a 3.07 ERA. The underlying numbers do not like him because he's a very much a pitch to contact guy, but he's at least having some level of success.
Bremer is striking out 16% of batters, walking 6%. He's also a relatively ground ball pitcher, but he's giving up a lot of home runs.
But as a staff, I mean, they have a 5.54 ERA and they're striking out less than 20%. That's just a bad recipe
So
for any team.
where does that put them as far as they're the second worst staff by ERA.
And what
They
about strikeout
are
rate?
the worst staff by FIP.
Yeah.
Um, I need to go to advanced apparently. They are fifth worst by strikeout rate.
Okay.
So I will say strikeout rate does not necessarily mean everything
But it means
because
something.
it does, but there's also really good pitching staffs. There's a top 5 pitching staff right now in at least the National League that has a 19% K rate, which is fourth worst.
That the
And
Cardinals?
it is the Cardinals, but the Cardinals also have statistically the best defense in the game right now with 25 outs above average. The next team has 17, and that's Houston. Houston and Atlanta, and 11 of the 17 for Atlanta are Nick Allen.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, so strikeout rate doesn't mean everything. It is pretty indicative of some stuff, especially if the defense behind you is not good. But there's also a big difference in the fielding independent pitching between a team like the Cardinals and a team like the Orioles, where the Cardinals fielding independent is 3.66, whereas for the Orioles, it is 5.05. So they're not striking guys out and they're ineffective. They're not getting the ground balls that they're supposed to be getting. Their left on base is lower. They're giving up over twice as many home runs per 9 innings. Like the damage that they're giving up is big. They're walking quite a few as a staff. Basically pretty close to 4 walks a game as a staff. So
Yeah. Well, that's all the pitching side. I think the struggles on offense are being forgotten just because of how bad the pitching is, but the offense has not been living up to the hype at all. When Ryan O'Hearn has been the best hitter and he's like a part-time platoon bat, that's not a good sign when everybody else has been less productive. Like Henderson's coming on slow because he had an injury. He's probably going to be fine, but I'm just looking at like Adley Rutschman, Cedric Mullins, and I think Jackson Holliday's played a lot better recently, but they've had other injuries like Jordan Westberg and who's the other guy that's hurt?
is it Colton Cowser?
Yep, Colton Cowser's hurt and Tyler O'Neill's hurt. So like they're missing big bats from the lineup, and then
And
the
Ramon
guys that are actually
Laureano and Gary Sanchez, and right now Adley Rutschman.
yeah. I just like I feel bad for them because nobody saw this coming, but it's really bad right now. They're 19 and 34. Their playoff odds are down to 2%. This is like it's just like one of those situations where everything that could possibly go wrong kind of went wrong.
So the Orioles right now are kind of middle of the pack for the major leagues as far as WRC plus is concerned. They are below 100. They're at 97. Puts them at number 16.
Okay.
But the thing that's really doing them in is that like just average offense, which is putting up 3.85 runs per game, coupled with the abysmal pitching staff, which is giving up 5.67 runs per game. They're averaging a 2-run loss every day. Like,
Yeah, when you put it in that context, yeah, it's horrible.
yeah,
That's why you're 19-34.
yeah. Like, if one of those things was going a little bit better, I don't think that Brandon Hyde would have been fired. But the fact that both are happening at the same time, one of them, Brandon Hyde, really couldn't affect all that much because he doesn't build the roster. He just works with what roster he has, and right now they haven't actually gone and tried to do anything to give him a pitching staff. He has a couple of relievers that are fantastic. Felix Bautista is fantastic. Yunior Cano is fantastic. But if you can't get it to those guys,
Right. So I guess do you see any hope for this team? Can they make a miraculous comeback? Can they be
miraculous,
the
no. I
2019 Nationals or something?
I I think even getting Grayson back, if Grayson is spectacular, is not
It's
going to
not
be enough.
enough.
No,
It's not enough.
it's
Yeah.
not. They need to make some moves now. They need to find a team that is underperforming now that has a guy that can maybe help them. I would actually, and hear me out, this is going to sound really, really stupid. I think the Orioles need to trade for the all-time leader in games started for the Colorado Rockies.
Freeland.
I think they need to trade for Kyle Freeland.
Okay. I don't think that's a needle mover either, but
I,
okay.
I don't think it's necessarily a needle mover, but I think keeping him out of Colorado so he doesn't have to keep adjusting his stuff can play when he's on. And I think just getting him into a better clubhouse with a better routine might go a long way to helping him, and it would certainly not hurt them. I mean, he's at least going to eat innings. He's not going to be like Charlie Morton, where this is the first time that he's pitched 5 innings in a game. So
Yeah.
I don't see it being a bad thing in any way, shape, or form. And he'd be cheap.
Yeah, but I guess I'd be would you be surprised if the Orioles are actually going to buy? I mean, I see a more likely case where they actually sell off and they trade like Felix Bautista and they try to reload for next year because they're returning most of their players.
Yes, I agree with that, but I think they're one of those teams that should be in the, if you can get the right move to improve for multiple years, which I think Freeland could be that. He would at least be a number 4 or 5 guy in their rotation. Like, I don't see the downside to it. It's not like that is going to put you out a ton, and it could potentially help you next year. It could help you this year. And yeah, you could still trade Bautista and get something back for him and reload for next year. But why wait until the offseason
Yeah.
if you have a situation like this where Freeland should be incredibly available? I don't think he's going to have all that many takers on him either.
Yeah,
So,
I would like to see the Orioles be creative in that sense, where it's not like a simple buy or sell, kind of like what the Cubs did last year, where they traded Morel and others for Paredes, and then they eventually parlayed that into Kyle Tucker. But it wasn't like a simple we're selling off for the 2024 season because they were still in it at that point. Um, but they made a move that helped like in the present and in the future, and the O's should be able to do that because I see this team. I think everybody sees this team being better going forward because they can't really be worse.
yeah. Now, they're 16 games below 500 right now, so it's not insurmountable, but it's going to be a tough, tough, tough road just to get back into the middle of the pack in this
Yeah,
division. Like, I don't think their chances of making the postseason are anything higher than a fraction of a decimal.
they're 2% right now.
Really? All right.
Yeah,
I guess Zips is high on them right now. But all right, we got 2 more quick notes here.
okay.
We are at an hour 5. But I think it is important to note The Juan Soto trade has almost come full circle. Almost. There is one player who is not debuted in the major leagues. His name is Harlan Susana. But that means that someone else debuted. That man is Robert Hassel the third. The third? The second. I think the third.
Don't know.
I think it's Robert Hassel the third. And he ended up scoring the game-winning run in his major league debut. Um, but that means that we have had James Wood, we have had Hassel, we have had who was the other one? It's in the majors.
Mackenzie Gore.
Yes, Mackenzie Gore. All in the major leagues for
Don't
the
forget the most
Nationals.
important part of the deal, Luke Voigt.
Yes, and Luke Voigt. He's not there this
Yes.
year, but he has played for the team and was a fairly important piece of their team for a year or two.
I think he was just there for the rest of that year, but
whatever.
no, but it's interesting to look at that deal now and just obviously it's Juan Soto, generational player, cannot be replaced. But the Nationals appear to have done very well. Like they've got Mackenzie Gore, who's leading the league in strikeouts. They've got CJ Abrams, who's really coming into his own. He looks like a star player. James Wood looks like a beast, and he's really in his first full season now.
Right. I didn't say Abrams, but yeah, I forgot Abrams was in that trade.
Oh, you didn't say Abrams, yeah.
No.
So yeah, it's even better than what you were probably thinking.
Yeah.
And then
100%.
now Hassel shows up, and we probably know the least about Hassel, but he's got elite speed. Looks like he can play center field. Whatever they get from him is going to be a bonus. And then there's one other guy, Susana, that hasn't even debuted yet.
I will say Hassel made kind of a weird misplay yesterday, which granted he's new to the league. I'll give him a week to settle in, but terrible play off the wall.
Okay.
Yeah.
I saw him make a nice diving catch the other day, so he can use that speed, but probably learn how to play the new ballparks and things like that.
Yeah. So it might take him a little time, but yeah, so it's interesting to see that trade come almost fully to fruition and to see it work out for Nats. At this point, it honestly looks like that trade was better for the Nats than it was the Padres, and the Padres got some really, really good play out of Soto. They played about as close to the Dodgers as you could possibly play in that division.
That's an interesting trade tree to follow because then you also got to count in that the Padres got back from the second Soto deal from the Yankees because they actually did well in that deal.
Yeah. So this is going to be that's an entire other episode, I think. So we have two new episodes coming out of this episode.
We'll revisit that in about 15 years when the Soto deal is over.
It's going to be like the Andy Reid coaching tree.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, last note, and then we will let you guys get out of here for the week. Reigning Cy Young, Tarek Skubal, is settling in and looking like he is going for Cy Young number 2. Yesterday.
When's the last time we've had back-to-back Cy Young winners? I feel like it's been a while.
That's a good question. I actually don't know.
Because typically when a guy wins the Cy Young, they've had a career season, they've pitched a ton of innings, and then there's just natural fallback to earth on the next year. Skubal is not showing that at all. He's picking up right where he left off.
In fact, he's
at the end of last year.
Better.
He's better
in a lot of respects. Yeah. So he had, I think, one game. I think it might have been the first game of the year for him. It was a little rough. It inflated his ERA. And so
it was against the Dodgers.
So yesterday, he threw a complete game shutout on 94 pitches. Hit 102.6 mile an hour on pitch number 94 to end the game.
Yeah.
Insane. There are two notable things about this game. One, that is the fastest pitch by a starting pitcher in the 9th inning since pitch tracking began. So broke that record.
Yeah.
Surely he didn't break any others, right? That'd be ridiculous. Yeah, he broke another. So he also had 13 strikeouts in that 94 pitches.
Unreal. Yeah.
The previous record was 12. So 2 records set by Tarek Skubal yesterday, bringing his season ERA down to a cool 2.49, with a fielding independent pitching number of 1.98. 13 Ks will do that. But yeah, he's striking out more guys than he did last year. He's walking fewer guys than last year. Home runs are about the same as last year. Hitters are getting luckier off him this year. Yet he's still just absolutely dominant. He's at 68 and 2/3 innings right now through 11 appearances. He only pitched 192 last year. He's on pace to reach that again. Just going to say on pace. We're going to end that sentence there. And his average fastball velocity is the highest it's ever been. You know what it is this year?
Is he highest in the league? 98?
98 on the dot.
Wow.
Last year was his previous career high. 97 on the dot.
He's got a whole mile per hour up.
Granted, he's got a lot of season left to go. That's huge. So
Yeah.
I would not be shocked to see Tarek Skubal win a second Cy Young this year, back to back.
And I think it's awesome for Tigers fans because everything is going well for their team right now. They've got like this ace pitcher that probably reminds them of Justin Verlander back in the day, because he was the guy that famously would ramp his velocity as he went through starts, and he would always pitch deep into games, and he'd be saving his best for last. And I was watching that the end of that start yesterday, and I was just like, wow, this really feels like Verlander. And then the way he just gassed up that last pitch, just gave everything he had through 103 and just blew the guy away. Like the catcher could barely catch the ball. Like it was incredible.
Just a quick pop quiz for you. You know where he was, where in the draft he was taken in 2018?
Yeah, he wasn't he like a he was like a 5th or 9th rounder, right?
9th round pick.
Yeah, 9th rounder. Yeah,
255th overall, and he's very
I love
possibly going to win back-to-back Cy Youngs.
And that's another thing I love about this whole story, because they had like 1-1 pick Casey Mize, and they had Jackson Jobe, and they had there another guy like a really they had Matt Manning.
Yeah.
And all those guys were maybe ahead of Skubal as they were all coming through the system. Obviously Jobe was years later, but Skubal ended up being that ace. Like he is the real 1-1 type player.
The guy you get
so
in
they
the
got
middle rounds.
Yeah,
ends
amazing.
Up being the best.
Absolutely amazing.
Dare I say the Tom Brady of baseball?
Yeah.
Just got to get him a couple ships. All right. Any other things that we need to mention here other than the fact that the Minnesota Twins, the St. Louis Cardinals, and the Philadelphia Phillies are all on absolute fire right now? Fun to watch. Go watch them. We'll probably talk more about that next week after the Cardinals fall back to earth.
Yay.
Yeah. There's nothing else. Thank you all for joining us this week, and we will see you next time.
If you enjoy the podcast, please subscribe on your favorite podcasting app and YouTube to make sure you don't miss any future episodes. Join the conversation on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at Getaway Day Pod. If you enjoy card collecting, check out our sister YouTube channel at Getaway Day Cards.